Hello YouTube, this is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard, and this is the Transdimensional Revolution headquarters. Hashtag Transdimensional Revolution. Please go on to Twitter and spread that around so we can change the world. Today we are going to talk about something. Before I do that, just let me remind you, we are having a sale until the 11th. Maoshan Spirit Fighting Kung Fu forms, $1,250 off until the 11th of this month. More on that later. All right. So today we're going to be talking about something that I didn't even know really existed, which is called central bank digital currency. And what does that mean? We are going to hear from one of the leaders of the deep state cabal, it was really the deep world state cabal, about how those in power want to completely control you on all levels, including your money. And we will talk about the revolution that we can engage in, which is non-violent, it is non-political, it is non-philosophical, it is non-spiritual. It is something that we can do which will, in fact, bring this world back into the hands of the people who should have it, which is me and you. All right, so let's talk about that. CBDC. Central Bank Digital Currency. So that should tell you something right there. But before I launch into my spiel about this, we're going to be hearing from the Prime Minister of the UK, no less. Very powerful individual in the world. And this person is going to tell us straight out how they plan on taking away all of your freedom. Before we do that, let us take a look at what the transdimensional revolution is all about. It is a revolution that has three goals. The first one is to disconnect human awareness from mind control influence of the 3D corporate elite. Second goal is to reveal to humans their true identity as free citizens of the conscious multidimensional universe. The third goal is to awaken inherent dormant 5D spiritual energies of all humans. The methods of the revolution. Number one, rejection of elite mainstream narrative. Number two, reversing personal devaluation programming. Number three, practicing spiritual energy techniques that destroy 3D limitations. Number four, initiating contact and creating relationships with interdimensional beings. And number five, living a free, fulfilling, and spiritually vibrant life. Hashtag Transdimensional Revolution. All right, let's just get right into it and listen to Prime Minister of the UK explain to us how he plans on taking away your freedom and really having total control over you. Let's listen.
Today, I'm proud to say that under the UK's presidency, the group of the world's 7 most advanced economies, the G7, is launching a set of public policy principles for retail central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies could be a digital version of money, a bit like a digital banknote that could be used alongside physical notes and coins. Unlike most of the digital money people use daily today, it would be issued directly by a central bank, like the Bank of England in the UK. And governments and central banks across the world are working together, looking into what having a digital currency might mean in practice. This includes issues that people care about, such as ensuring users' money would be safe and secure, that it could work with other ways to pay, would be energy efficient and available to everyone. A potential CBDC could offer businesses and consumers new ways to pay in the future. It's all part of the wider story of digital innovation that has delivered benefits to millions around the world and in the UK. The decision on whether to launch a central bank digital currency is for each country to make, and no G7 jurisdiction has yet made that choice. These decisions raise important questions about the reshaping of our economy, financial systems, and the way in which people interact with money and payments. That's why working together and careful evaluation with our international partners is essential. In the UK, earlier this year, I announced a new joint task force between the Treasury and the Bank of England to look into a potential CBDC as a complement to cash and bank deposits. We're also hearing from firms, technology experts and others. Under the leadership of the UK, this report today will help support and inform exploration of CBDCs in the G7 and beyond. With these principles, the G7 is leading an important step change in the global policy conversation. The report covers a range of important matters, such as financial stability, cyber resilience, energy efficiency, privacy, inclusion, and tackling illicit finance. These factors should all be considered when designing and potentially delivering a CBDC that would be fit for the future. Resilience, energy efficiency, privacy, inclusion, and tackling illicit finance.
All right, so let's just go ahead and shut that off. I've heard enough. So let's talk about money for a second. As I've said many times, money is an illusion. Money does not exist. You think it exists. It doesn't. And here's something. It never has existed. Never. The only thing that has ever existed has been resources. Resources means what you need to survive. Food, clothing, shelter, transportation, protection. These are the resources that all people need. Money came about with the invention of empires. We're talking thousands of years ago. Just to give you an example, even though right now, or at least in the last century, Europeans were the people who've been pretty much running the earth. But 2,000 years ago, Europeans, especially Northwestern Europeans, were the primitive peoples of the world. So my ancestors who lived way up in Northwestern Europe 2,000 years ago were looked upon by the people who lived in the Roman Empire the same way that we look on uncivilized tribes in the Amazon. You know, when you see those pictures of those natives and they're throwing spears at planes, you know, the last few tribes that haven't been contacted yet, that's how they viewed the people who are now running the world. And in my ancestors, when the first Romans went up into Northwestern Europe, which back then was basically a jungle, it was a swampy, thickly forested place. You couldn't get in there with big military hardware. You had to go in by foot and, you know, go through the swamps. It was like being in a jungle. And when they got to the local people there, which we would call the Germanic tribes, the local people there, they didn't have any money. There was no need for it. They lived in connection to their environment. If they needed food, they went and hunted it, or they got it from their sheep or their goats or their chickens or whatever they had. And if they needed clothing, they made it from skins, or they made it from plants, fibers, or whatever they did. If they needed shelter, they would build it. And what you did is you bartered with people. And you gave of your services and they gave you of their services. There was no such thing as money. In fact, the one of the words for money that we have is fee, F-E-E. And that comes from the Old English word for cow, which is fehu. Fehu means cow. It means that if you wanted something done, you gave somebody a cow. You gave them a fee. Gave them a fehu in exchange for whatever service or whatever resource they gave to you. Money came about when your community gets so big and it gets so chaotic, and people separate themselves from the natural world. So when you separate yourself from the natural world, you don't have resources to give somebody else. So you have to give them something else. So what would happen is the powerful would enslave the less powerful, and the less powerful people would then, farm the crops or do the labor or whatever it was. And in exchange for that, the elites would give you a symbol of wealth. I listen to people talk about people talking about this very same thing, central bank digital currency. And they talk about the solution being to go back to the gold standard. Except that gold is a symbol. It doesn't have any value in and of itself. You can't even wipe your ass with it. You can't eat it. You can't wear it. You can't drink it. You can't live in it. It does not meet your physical needs. It is not a resource. It is a symbol. It is shiny. When the Romans gave silver cups to the Germanic tribespeople as gifts, they went, oh, that's nice, and they put it on a shelf because it was fancy looking. It was shiny, and then they drank out of their wooden cups. When you gave them, if you gave them a choice between silver or gold, they would pick silver because silver was shinier. They didn't know that gold was more valuable than silver. These are my ancestors, the people who are running the world now. Point is that even in modern times, when nobody uses it now, but if you pull out a dollar bill, that's supposed to represent gold in a bank somewhere, and it doesn't anymore. The British pound used to mean a pound of silver. So these bank notes, these IOUs from the government, used to actually be connected to actual physical stuff that represented money. But we no longer have that physical stuff anymore. Even though gold is symbolic, it's still something that you can hold on to. Nobody can control it if you have it. If you have stacks of cash under your mattress, and cash is the actual thing that has value, nobody can control you if you have access to it. But if you don't have access to your own money, your own capital, then you can be controlled. And this is the setup. The setup is, even though, I can sit here and talk about how cash money is meaningless. It doesn't have any value except for the value that you and I agree it has. Again, you've got a piece of paper with a picture of a dead politician on it. And that only has value if you and I agree to the amount of value that is ascribed to it. Again, if you have a $10,000 bill, if the person you want to get your resource from does not agree that that piece of paper has that value, then that piece of paper isn't even worth wiping your ass with because it's not absorbent. So we're now in a worse place where the governments together, again, it's not governments anymore like there's countries. There's one giant world government that's coming together, and they want to have complete control over your money. It's now not even going to be something physical in the bank. It's going to be ones and zeros. I've been laughing this whole time at this cryptocurrency thing that's been going on for however many years it's been going on. Because, people think that it's hidden, the government can't get access to it. And now, you have to pay taxes on your cryptocurrency, which was the whole point of cryptocurrency to begin with, that it couldn't be taxed. Now you get taxed on your cryptocurrency. Not only is cryptocurrency not anything to invest in or keep yourself safe from the government. Now the government is going to take over cryptocurrency, and they call it central bank digital currency. Ones and zeros. Now, if the bank has total control over not even anything physical, just the idea of, ones and zeros, there's nothing physical that you can grab onto. You can't go to the bank now and just walk out with your cryptocurrency because there's nothing there. There's nothing for you to go and store or hide or put away somewhere. You can't do it. But what they can do is they can freeze your account whenever they want. They can, like for instance, what has been going on throughout the world during the past couple of years, where school teachers who have refused to have medical procedures done on them, even though governments have required that, for instance, school teachers get these medical procedures done. They have refused to do it, and the government has now said you will be penalized financially. The President of the United States a couple of years ago looked me in the eye as he addressed the whole world and said that if you did not get an experimental medical procedure done to you, that he would do everything in his power to take away your ability to make money. Now imagine they've got something like that happen, and the government bank has access to all of your non-existent money. What it means is then they're going to start doing things like, I mean, I don't even like using my phone or my iPad because, I mean, I don't know if you realize it. Did you pick up on what has happened as phones have gotten more advanced? In order to open your phone, you put in your fingerprint. If you don't think that your fingerprints aren't being scanned, that, all kinds of people have access to all of your phone has been hacked by all levels of people. They can track you with it. If you don't think that your face, your fingerprint, and, if they get their way, there's going to be physical, tattoos, there's going to be chips inserted into you. You're going to be everywhere you go. You're going to be tracked. If you do the wrong thing, eventually the CBDC thing means that they can take money away from you. They can block you from having access to your money. They will have complete control over you because without this non-existent form of currency, without having access to it, you can't eat. You can't eat, you can't pay rent, you can't run a business, you can't make money, you can't sell anything. This is where we're headed now. This is the end result. And if these last 2 years had gone the way they wanted it to go, thankfully it hasn't been as successful. It was extremely successful, but it wasn't as successful as they wanted it to be. Everybody would have already been signed up into this. If you listened to the speech, he said some ridiculous things like, this will be up to the, he didn't say these words, but he gave the impression that it will be up to the individual to be part of the central bank digital currency system. Each country will have to decide. There's some very important decisions. And we're going to be able to protect your money, protect it from fraud, protect it from theft, right? He even said something about, did I hear him say something about more ecologically friendly? I mean, it's ridiculous. Absolutely, totally ridiculous. So the idea is that we're just supposed to accept what they say when we say, well, what we want to do is we want to centralize all of your finances. We want to get rid of cash we already got rid of gold and silver. Now we're going to get rid of cash. And now there's just going to be digital currency, but we're going to centralize it. We're going to watch over it for you. Big Brother is going to take care of you. By the way, if you haven't ever seen the movie or read the book 1984, now is the time, because we are living in that. Where all of your information has been falsified. The information that you do get, if there's any truth to it, there's half-truths, conflations. And now they're going to want to control every single aspect of your life. And with this, they'll be able to force you to do anything they want. If they want you to get a sex change, they have all of your resources. You won't be able to eat. You won't be able to live. You won't be able to move. You won't be able to do anything. That's an extreme example, but that's where this is headed. So we need to revolt. And the revolution that I am proposing is not something I've made up, but it is something that I think, it's absolutely necessary. And what we're revolting against isn't a government. This is not a political party. This isn't religious, it's not philosophical, it's not financial, it's not military. What we are revolting against is the entire third dimension. We are rebelling against the physics of the third dimension, because there is no place left to go. Where we are headed is we are headed to the extinction of the human race in the third dimension. We're coming to the end of it. If human beings are not prepared to wake up emotionally, psychologically, energetically, and become members of multiple dimensions, not just the third dimension, but until we're ready to become citizens of a free universe, there's only two paths left to go, which is the end of the human race in 3D, or we evolve beyond our dense 3D experience. And so I'm just using this as, it's a very convenient example of, what's being proposed here today. I'm old enough now, I can say, is absolutely unheard of. If you had said this to me 20 years ago, that the governments of the world, plural, are going to want to come together and centralize money, that they're going to get rid of all cash, all gold, all silver, and they will have ones and zeros in a centralized bank that they control and dole out to you. Bear in mind, you're going out doing the work. Assuming you got a business, you go out and you get your income. And then what? You deposit it into a government centralized bank? And all that government has to do is pass a law. That's all they have to do. Pass a law, and then if you're in violation of that law, whatever it is, if the punishment, just like not getting a particular medical treatment a couple of years ago, choosing not to get a medical treatment a couple of years ago cost many people their jobs, their entire livings. And that's before you're centralizing money in a government bank into a digital currency. That's when people are still walking around with cash. So imagine when they have control of it. This is where things are headed. It's not going to turn around. It's not going to get better. It's not going to be solved by politics. It doesn't matter which political party you're following. Politics isn't going to solve it. The only thing that will solve it is if we can poke holes into the third dimension. If we can poke holes into the third dimension, We live in a bubble of 3D experience. And that bubble has a two-way mirror. We can't see out, but people in other dimensions can see in. And so what we need to do is poke holes in that two-way mirror so that we can see beyond. Because the only reason that anybody would even submit to a society that uses money as resources, the only reason human beings have allowed the idea of money to control their resources is because of the limitations of being in the third dimension. And the limitations of being in the third dimension is you operate from fear, you operate from greed, you operate from a desire to belong, you feel isolated. You're standing next to somebody, you can't hear their thoughts, you don't know what they're feeling, you feel isolated from them. If you don't know them, you don't know if you can trust what they say. You don't know if they're telling you the truth or not. That's from being in the third dimension. You go beyond the third dimension, somebody stands next to you, you feel them. You can feel their essence, they can feel your essence. You can hear their thoughts, they can hear your thoughts. There's no need for trying to stay secret or hide, because once you're in that experience, you no longer fear anything or anybody. And this is why this is a transdimensional revolution. We have to be willing to go beyond the confines of 3D. It's not even, I just don't see how human life's going to continue unless this expansion occurs. So, going back to the rules, I just wrote this up. I'm not trying to start any religion or anything, but going back to the points here. First goal is to disconnect human awareness from the mind control influence of the 3D corporate elite. That starts with realizing that money does not exist, not even digital currency. It doesn't exist, it never has. You want to use money, fine. As long as you understand it doesn't exist. As long as you understand it's a symbol. You realize that people are killed every day for paper, stacks of paper. People are killed over it. And the only thing that gives those stacks of paper any value is literally an intellectual idea. That's it. People are dying over an idea. They're not dying over something real. It's not even like you're stealing something real from the person. You're just stealing pieces of paper that have this arbitrary intellectual concept pasted on top of it. That is crazy. It's crazy to believe that there is such a thing as money. So I'm here to tell you, in higher dimensions, there's no money, there's no banks, there's no government control. Everybody is seen for who they are. And the truth is that every single conscious being is infinite. It is God. Whatever concept you have of God is quantum enfolded into an incarnated being. Every single being is the ultimate of valuable life. And in higher dimensions, you see that in every conscious being. There's never a thought of how to get over on this person or control that person. Nobody's ever thinking about being good enough. None of that happens in higher dimensions. It only happens in the third dimension. So the revolution is to go beyond that. To reveal to humans their true identity as free citizens of the conscious multidimensional universe, is what I just said. Awaken inherent, dormant 5D spiritual energies of humans. So that's what this channel is all about. I'm not the only game in town. I don't need to be the only game in town. I share with you all of the techniques that I have to poke holes into that two-way mirror in the globe that we have, the fishbowl that we live in. That can only be done through energy practices, meditative energy practices. That's the only way that we can break through the interdimensional barrier. And so I offer those to you. You can go onto the channel if you know how to do it. Go onto the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. Go to the playlists. Do any of the energy practices or meditations. You can do the Hool breath every day. You can do the Awakening the Immortals. You can do the Heaven Earth Qigong. Do some or any of the practices every day. And if you really want to smash that two-way mirror, then you can make the decision to initiate contact with beings in higher dimensions. These beings in higher dimensions, we used to call them angels. We used to call them fairies. We used to call them elves. We used to call them, some of them deities. Deities is something else, but we used to call them deities, demigods, the ancestors. Your ancestors are in higher dimensions. If they're no longer in a physical body, they're in a higher dimension. It is an illusion that we live in a concrete 3D universe. The 3D universe is not concrete. It's very malleable. It is a complete illusion. I got nothing against it. I enjoy it. If it weren't for 3D illusion, I couldn't surf. I don't know what they do in the fifth dimension, but you know, the more limited you are, the easier it is to catch a wave and stand up and surf on it and have fun. So I like being in the third dimension. I like some of the limitations because it gives me an opportunity to have more fun in a physical body. But if you want to smash that, then you can initiate contact with higher dimensional beings. And you can create relationships with them. Now, here's the illusion you'll find out. If you do reach out and make contact with a higher dimensional being, which they're waiting to do, by the way, they are literally waiting. They're looking at their phone, waiting for you to text them. These beings already know you. They know everything there is to know about you because they have known you over many lifetimes. You have interacted with them in other dimensions, in other incarnations. You don't know that. You will interact with these beings and you will feel like they have much more power than you. And then you will find out very quickly as they reveal to you who they are, you will find out that they're your ancestors, they're your relatives, they are friends that have been with you over thousands of lifetimes. What happens is when you incarnate into 3D, what happens is you and your friends, these are people you know, they're souls, they're friends of yours. You've known them, as I said, for thousands of lives. When you incarnate, you tell your friend, here's what I'm here to learn in this 3D thing. And your friend says, that's totally cool. I'm going to be there and I'm going to support you. How can I best interact with you? What signs can I give you? How can I connect with you? Well, if you're alive today, which if you're listening to me, of course you are, here it is in November of 2022. If you're alive today, what it means is that you chose to be alive in the third dimension when the interdimensional barrier was destroyed. How do I know that? Because how many months ago was it? 4 or 5 months ago. I didn't know, the only thing I knew about higher dimensional beings was, what I saw in movies. And I had heard if I do this thing called CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Protocol, human-initiated contact with extraterrestrials, I heard that if you do that, you will be able to have access and communicate with beings from higher dimensions. And I said, I have to experience that. And I'm so dense, I'm so thick-headed, that it took me until the third time before I actually realized I had made contact. I actually had made contact the first two times. I was just too dense to realize it. The third time it became, I was lucky enough to have a being that was powerful enough to break through my perceptual barriers. And the first thing this being said to me was, "I'm your brother." Now, I didn't know what the hell that meant then. But what I know now is, after having interacted with this being for a while, come to understand that we got a history together. That we've been interacting with each other over thousands of lifetimes. This person knows me more than I know myself. Now, I'm in 3D, so I don't remember so much about him. And that's only one of them. This idea that you feel isolated in this fishbowl of dense 3D existence is an illusion. And in order to overcome the elite of this planet that want to destroy you and control you in every possible way, the only way left to do that is in an interdimensional revolution. We've got to shift up to a higher dimension. And we've got a lot of energy coming at us. There's talk about this thing called the solar wave, which my friend told me about, the solar flash. That's coming. I don't know when. But in the meantime, there is a very real need for us to break through. To break through and become interdimensional beings ourselves. And to choose to become citizens of an entire multiverse that is filled with an infinite number of higher civilizations where there is no poverty, there is no war, there is no pollution, there is no damage, abuse, violence. None of that stuff exists. It only exists here. And the only people who benefit from that are people who are absolutely committed to keeping the third dimension density over you. And that is what we call the deep state, the cabal, the elites, the Illuminati. The very, very rich people who have all of the resources and are controlling all of the resources and doing their best to have as much control over you as possible. So, I offer that to you to engage in the revolution with me. So, hashtag transdimensional revolution. Share it with people, share it with your friends, and let's do this thing together. If you're interested in CE5, all you have to do is Google it. You don't have to ask me what it means. You can just type in the letter C, the letter E, the number 5, and then the word protocols. And then just go do it. You can go find a group of people that does it if you want, or you can do it by yourself if you're brave enough. But I guarantee you, if you do it with an honest intention, even if you're a little scared about it, if you have an honest intention, I will guarantee you that you will make contact. You may have to do it a few times before you realize that, oh my God, I made contact the first time. I just didn't realize it. But once you create that relationship and once you connect to the energies of higher dimensions, you can never close that door again. The door to 3D is forever closed. One of the things that's changed with me, I have zero doubt about the nature of the soul. I have zero doubt about the afterlife. Zero. I don't wonder if people that I knew that no longer are here still exist. They do. And I have, and understand that when you make a relationship with somebody, it's potentially eternal. Every person you've ever made friends with, every animal you've ever connected to, even if they leave the goldfish bowl of the third dimension, that relationship continues. You will see them again. You will interact with them again. There is no isolation. And the reason why Earth is so much of a bizarre world in comparison with the rest of the universe is because we're pretty much the only planet that thinks that we're alone. I don't know. I'm sure that there are other lower density three-dimensional worlds. I mean, there has to be. But the percentage of, if you're looking at conscious civilizations in the multiverse, the percentage of them that live in the 3D like us, it's got to be, a very small percentage. I can't come up with a figure. But my point is that what we think is normal is abnormal. Feeling isolated, feeling alone, having fear, being in pain, feeling unloved, being afraid of what's going to happen to you, being afraid of what people could do to you. That is something that is unique to the third dimension. It is, once you get beyond the third dimension, none of that exists. But you won't know that unless you do something about it. So the difference between me and some religious leader is that I'm not asking you to believe in what I'm telling you. I'm not Buddha. I'm not saying believe in my philosophy and become a Buddhist. I'm not a Christian saying believe in Jesus and you'll be saved. I'm saying I saw this. I didn't make it up. I tapped into it. Here's what I saw when I tapped into it. And the good news is you can do it. You don't need me to do it for you. You don't need me to tell you what to believe. You go figure it out for yourself. But every single person who reaches out and connects to higher dimensions, that is the amount of energy that's released every time one person connects to higher dimensions and their thinking expands. What ends up happening is that the ability of the corporate elite gets reduced drastically. So the more people that do this, the more people that become warriors in the transdimensional revolution, the faster the elite will completely lose power. And that is my goal. My goal in this is to completely destroy their ability to function in any way. It's not going to be done through activism. It's not going to be done through violence. It's not going to be done through politics. It's not going to be done through philosophy or religion. It's only going to be done when people actually connect to higher dimensions. If you want help doing that, that's what I'm here to help you with. All of the energy practices that I share with you are designed to give you the power to feel the connection, to physically feel the connection to higher dimensions and to energies beyond yourself, to feel the love, to feel the power, and to know that you do not have to do anything to be valuable. You are already immensely valuable. There is literally nothing you can do. Nothing. There is not one thing you can do that will make you more valuable and more lovable than you already are. Any sins that you commit or any negativity, it's just negativity that you do to yourself. It doesn't take away your value. It only takes away the idea of your value in your own mind. And usually people do these things in order to fit in. I know I have. In order to fit in with 3D, you devalue yourself in the hopes that other humans will accept you. But when you realize that there's nothing you can do that will ever make you more lovable or valuable than you are right now, then you stop trying. And once you realize that there is nothing you can do to make yourself more lovable and more valuable, then the only thing left is, well, what do I want to do? And then you start living for one reason only, and that is to bring yourself joy. And when you bring yourself joy, you bring joy to the entire multiverse. So anyway, repeating myself backwards and forwards, I can open it up to questions. But before I do, once again, the Maoshan Spirit Fighting, which is the most powerful energy system on the planet, in my humble opinion, I am giving this away, not giving it away. I am reducing the price by $1,250 until the 11th. So you have less than 2 weeks. And to take a hold of that, you go to maoshan.thunderwizard.com and you can get started with that. I recommend that everybody who does those forms definitely subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Challenge, because the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong is the Maoshan University. In that, I have given you other Maoshan meditations, mudras, other very powerful techniques that will tap you into higher dimensional energies, as well as I have combined the three most important spiritual energies that human beings have been studying forever. And now, because we're coming to this, this end point in 3D reality, the light beings have said to me, combine all these together. I don't know anybody else that has done it. You have to be careful when you do it, because if you combine these energies, you can actually cause yourself some harm. I have created a safe, functional, and effective system that combines chi energy, which is life force energy, kundalini, which is the energy of psychic spiritual awareness, and the lightning energy of the heart mind, which is the lightning energy that is dormant surrounding the heart. And when you release that in your body, that energy is the most powerful cleansing agent in the third dimension. It will destroy any negativity, especially the negativity within you. When you combine all three of those energies, there is nothing more powerful. And when you're operating on that level, tapping into higher dimensions becomes a lot easier, and you don't lose your mind nearly as much, because once you go outside the third dimension, it doesn't follow our laws of physics or what we understand to be true. But it's a wonderful, amazing universe out there, and that's the good news. If you're like me, perhaps you thought that if you have to be careful after death because some horrible beings might come after you to take advantage of you, to control you. And the truth is that the only beings in higher dimensions, the only thing that they want is to know you and to love you and empower you. The only beings that want to control you and hurt you are the beings in 3 dimensions, and those are humans. All right, so that's it. I've done all my business. Let us now take a look and see. Let me get this one back here. Hang on. I want this one playing in the background. Okay. All right. Let's see what kind of questions we have. If you have a question, write the word question in all caps. I want to see the word question. And then write your question. And if you have a feeling, please share your feelings. All right, Thundra says hello. She is one of my Vedic astrologers, and she has a website. You can go to her website, thundra.thunderwizard.com, thundra.thunderwizard.com. She has a lot of services. Check it out. And then she's got Spirit Lounge. Her name is Grace. She is a healer in her own right, and she's one of my rune readers. And you can go to her website at grace.thunderwizard.com. Vincent.thunderwizard.com. All right. He is also one of my Vedic astrologers. Vincent.thunderwizard.com. And you can see here in the chat all of the other fabulous things he has, including his own YouTube channel. Go check him out. All right, Scott Bonata, I've seen your name before. Why is it so difficult to follow directions, you guys? You're not the only one. It happens all the time. I don't get it. If I don't see the word question, I can't answer it. So write the word question in all caps. I know you know that you've heard me say that. There's no reason for you not to do that. You say, when that happens, what are you going to do? So if you're going to write a question, you have to, number one, not have the narcissism to assume that I know what was going on 10, 20, or 30 minutes ago when you wrote that. I don't know what you're referring to. What makes you think I'm going to know what you're talking about? When that happens, when what happens? Why am I giving you a hard time? If you want to survive in this world, you have to be willing to put effort and to pay attention. You didn't do either of those things. So I can't answer that question because I don't know what the hell you're asking me. Have respect for yourself. Write out a whole question with a context so that I have the information. Unless you think I'm so psychic that I can figure it out. I'm not. And as powerful as I am, I'm not going to go back in time and try and figure out what I think you were thinking. So try again. Okay, that's somebody else helping him out. Scott Bernard, a question. Are you going to obey or be rebel? So Scott, welcome to the channel. I encourage you to actually spend some time on the channel, watch the videos. That's not a question. I don't know what you're talking about. And, you know, what is it? What are you being cute? Come on, put some effort. You have a brain. You can use it. You can actually have some deeper thoughts and questions than that. I believe in you. Atham Animist, question. If this digital currency law passes, how likely do you think it is that there will be communities of people that don't use money? I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't even said that I wouldn't use digital currency. The point I'm trying to make is that it's just, you know, it's getting to the point now where it's just over the top clear what is going on. There's no hiding it anymore. So as I said, my revolution isn't a revolution of politics. It's not a financial revolution. It's not a religious revolution. I'm not telling people to do or not do anything. I'm telling them to be aware. And probably you wrote that question before I got to the end of my spiel, which was the way to destroy the power of the elites is to free ourselves internally, energetically, and for those of us who wish to, actually break through the dimensional barrier. When you break through the dimensional barrier, you will, by definition, be an interdimensional revolutionary. Because that, let me explain to you, for those of you who don't know, there's, you know, I'm not a ufologist. I talk about ETs all the time. I talk to ETs all the time on a daily basis. I had a really great session this morning as I was waking up. My friend showed up and we had a really great, powerful communication. Why did I say that? I'm not a ufologist. I don't spend any time looking for UFOs or studying UFOs or crashed UFOs because I've already got a connection with them. I don't need to prove to myself or figure it out. I mean, those physical things are very superficial and I find them mildly interesting at best. But one of the things that is one of the reasons I don't spend any time in the UFO community is because so many people are wrapped up in the idea of abductions. And I understand why. Because if you have never had an interdimensional experience, you don't know what ETs are. If you've never had an interdimensional experience, you think that ETs are three-dimensional, strange-looking beings that live on other planets and fly around in gravity-defying metal ships. You may think they have psychic powers, you may think they have really advanced technology that can bend space and time, but you still think of them as 3D. And because you think this way, the powers that be have been faking interactions with extraterrestrials for 100 years. And the way that they've faked it is, of course, there's a couple things that have been going on for at least 100 years. One is that human beings have extremely advanced technology, even without reverse engineering crashed alien spacecraft. Even if we got rid of that supposed scenario, human beings already have come up with extremely advanced technology. And you're not aware of it. I can remember, had to have been probably 30 years ago. There was a guy, and he's one of many, and he was on the news back when news was a little different, but he was on the news. He was all over the news, and he had invented a car that ran on water. Not only did he invent a car that ran on water, but he had patented it, and he was going to sell the technology. And people were starting to talk about how they were going to buy these cars that ran on water. And the last news bit that was done on the guy was you were being told by the newscaster that the Defense Department was interested in his designs. And that was the last we ever heard of him. The last words he ever spoke was, "Oh my God, I've been poisoned." And he's one. And that's just a car that runs on water. There is technology that human beings have created that goes far beyond what you can imagine, that because you don't know it exists, if you saw it, you would think it was extraterrestrial. And so what humans have been doing for 100 years, knowing this, because if you connect with an actual extraterrestrial, which is a higher dimensional being, which has been, up until recently, has been the gods, has been the elves, has been the fairies, has been the guardian angels, has been the demigods. Up until now, that's what they've been, because they've been guiding human and human spiritual progress since before human beings ever evolved. They've been here since before humans. So it's not like they just got here. And they've been interacting with us this whole time. But the people who have the knowledge and have the money and have the technology have known that the most dangerous threat to their power is if you connected to an interdimensional being. If you were able to connect with an interdimensional being, you would become aware of the nature of our universe. And you would become aware that three-dimensional reality is nothing. And you would not be able to be manipulated. You would not be able to be frightened. You would not be able to be coerced into anything. So what's been going on for the past 100 years has been a covert campaign to keep you frightened, because they saw that what was going to happen is that higher dimensional beings were going to start pulling away the interdimensional barriers and start revealing themselves to humans for one reason only, so that we would rise to their level. And if you start to rise to their level, the 3D humans who want to control you can't control you. It's the thing that they're most afraid of. So they have been creating and manufacturing these abductions. So every time you hear about ETs and you start hearing somebody talk about an abduction is not an extraterrestrial experience, it is a human experience. It's just done by humans with extremely powerful technology. They have the ability to create in a laboratory hybrid robot beings that look a lot like actual extraterrestrials. They have access to weapons, psychological weapons, and energy weapons that can get into your mind, put visions in your mind. What do you think MK Ultra was? That's just the most low-level, superficial idea of that. They've been doing it for 100 years. I'm sorry to say that even people whom I respect, like Whitley Strieber, are unknowing agents of disinformation. They are out there telling the world that aliens are these frightening beings that come to you in spaceships and come into your house and take you out of your bed and put you in a stupor and make it impossible for you to move, and they do experiments on you, and there's no way that you will then want to connect with them. Because the truth of the matter is that if you do connect with a higher dimensional being, it might be a frightening experience at first, but that's only because your 3D world comes apart. But if you're a human being and you have high level advanced technology that can mimic that kind of experience, which is what happens during abductions, you can't tell the difference between I was just in a higher dimension or no. Some human being just pointed a laser beam at your head from 10 miles away and made you think that you had that happen. Because these beings have zero desire, absolutely zero desire to do anything in any way harmful to you. Not only that, they have zero need. They have no need to get any of your tissues or fluids. And how is it that these beings who are able to travel millions of light years, they have the technology to go faster than the speed of light, and yet they can't help but put some clunky little thing in you that comes out and gets infected, and doctors pull it out and go, what the hell is this? It's all a scam. So I don't know where that came from. You're asking me what's the likelihood that communities of people won't use money. I'm not saying that people will or won't use money. I'm saying that when we awaken and we tap into this, we will all walk away from it, because the elites only have power if we give it to them. If we don't give them the power, they can't do anything. All right. Hopefully I answered that question. Vincent.thunderwizard.com question. Are higher dimensional beings the same as Vedic deities? Depends on which dimension we're talking about. Short answer is yes. If we're talking about beings at the 9th dimensional level or higher, those are deities. And to blow your mind even further, not only are they deities, but you, whoever you are, and you, Vincent, or somebody, every single human listening to me, you are a holographic projection in the 3rd dimension of a 9th dimensional deity. In the 9th dimension, we're talking about omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience, infinity, being in control of infinite numbers of universes, not just this universe, but infinite numbers of universes. And each one of you is a 3-dimensional projection of a 9th dimensional deity. So yes, Vedic deities. Why do mantras work? When you chant to Shiva, Om Namah Shivaya, why does that work? Because when you do that, you are tapping into your 9th dimensional self. And when you do that, you automatically are saying to your 9th dimensional self, the deity from which you came, you are saying, I want to start aligning myself to the most prosperous, healthy path that I can take. And your ninth dimensional self says, that is awesome. Let us start reforming your unconscious mind so you stop doing things that damage you. This is why worshiping deities is not the same as worshiping God. God, the Jehovah, the Abrahamic God, is not a ninth dimensional deity. You know, right now I'm going to do something I've never done. I'm going to agree with the Gnostics. People who talk about the demiurge. What they're talking about is Jehovah. It's a third dimensional mindset. It is narcissistic ego. This is why when you worship God, God is separate from you. And, one Vedic mantra is Om Tat Sat, which translates to I am that, which means I am everything. It's the same as saying I am God. So when you worship a Vedic deity, you're not worshiping something outside of you. You're worshiping a higher, more concentrated version of yourself, which means that you are literally empowering the infinite divinity within you, as opposed to worshiping Jehovah, which is a three-dimensional construct. When you worship Jehovah, you are worshiping the narcissistic idea of separation and isolation. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Here are these 10 commandments. You must follow all of these 10 commandments or I'm going to put these plagues on you. What's that? The 10 commandments are too perfect and nobody can do them perfectly? Ha ha ha! I own you. I am Jehovah. It's the lower dimensional. You're worshiping your own ego. So in each case, you're worshiping something within yourself. If you worship Jehovah, you're worshiping your narcissistic ego, which wants to separate you and keep you in the third dimension. When you worship a Vedic deity or a Norse deity or, a polytheist deity, it's not limited to that. But for instance, you mentioned Vedic deities. When you're worshiping a Vedic deity, by chanting the name of the deity, you are turning on in your DNA. You are turning on the aspects of that deity within yourself. You are deifying yourself. So yes, higher dimensional beings can be said to be the same as Vedic deities. Now, that means, of course, that's true for you. What I just said about anybody is true for you. You are a Vedic deity. So when you go up to another dimensional level, let's say this being right here, let's say this being, let's say that this picture right here is a fifth dimensional being. I like it because, the face is looking in at least three directions. That's what would happen in the fifth dimension. You wouldn't be seeing, like this. You'd actually be seeing in multiple planes. You would be experiencing multiple planes of reality at once. You would be in multiple times at once. You'd be in multiple timelines at one time. That's what would happen with anybody. Me, you, anybody. If we go up to the fifth dimension, we in essence become like a god. But if this beautiful blue being behind me, if that were a real fifth dimensional, higher dimensional being, which would interact with you, definitely could be interacting with you as an ET. Compared to us, because we're in 3D, they would be a deity or a demigod. But they themselves, if they were to experience a sixth dimensional, let's say they had a mentor that was in the sixth dimension, that sixth dimensional being would be like a deity to them. But whether you're in the fifth, sixth, seventh, or eighth dimension, and each time you go up a dimension, it gets, the craziness and the power expands beyond what we can even begin to consider. but each time that you go up, you're still a holographic projection of a ninth or higher dimensional being. So this fifth dimensional being right here helping me out, when I experience it, would make me like the energy would be super intense. They would know everything about me. They would be able to communicate with me telepathically. They would be able to appear and disappear and do things that were just absolutely beyond my third dimensional comprehension. But even they are a fifth dimensional holographic projection of a ninth dimensional deity. You got me? In fact, you could interact with your fifth dimensional self. I interacted with, I don't know what version of myself it was, but it was a higher dimensional version of me. And this was the period when I first was interacting. I had first had my Yuhuaj shamanic initiation experience with my friend, and so I was just, there were entities showing up every single day, sometimes for hours on end, sometimes throughout the entire night. I mean, they would be working on me energetically. I woke up one night and, you know, of course I can't see anything because I'm in 3D, but my foot was being was up off the bed and was being stretched, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? You know, they were just working my energy body, my physical body, and my mind and my spirit, and it was a really intense period. And during one of these experiences, I was lying in bed. Sometimes I sought them out, and I sought out the experience, and sometimes they'd show up. To their credit, they don't, you know, just barge in on me. They let me know. They send me a message, you know, telepathically saying, hey, we're going to show up a little later on today. So, you know, keep your schedule open. We got a lot of work to do. And during one of those sessions, I believe it was one of those sessions, a being showed up. And of course, I can't see it, but I can feel it. And he says, it's your lucky day, Sparky. I'm your higher self, and I'm going to do some work on you. I hated him. I immediately hated him. He was so full of himself. And and then I pretended, you know, because he was a higher dimensional being. So I would say, you know, thank you for coming. He's like, yeah, whatever. And I realized that all of the negativity I had towards him, the real lesson was, oh my God, that's how I feel about myself. I think I'm cocky. I think that I'm, you know, dismissive. I think that I'm all these other things. And so I knew what it was like for a lot of you guys. Because I know when I come at you with the mirror, I'm not coming at you with any negativity. I got nothing against anybody. I don't hate anybody. I'm only wanting you to be happy and prosperous. And when you're full of crap, I'm going to tell you. That's just the way I do things. And so I come across dismissive, and I come across demeaning, and I come across, you know, you get your feelings hurt and all of that. And this guy was dismissive, and he was grandiose, and he was full of himself. But he totally reworked my energy body. And he empowered me, and he did his job, and he was gone. He didn't want to have any small talk. But the bigged lesson for me was I had a list of all of the things, all of the negative projections I had about myself. I went, wow. So you have one of those too. And for all you know, and the other thing that happens is that you can start downloading higher versions of yourself. That is a trippy experience, and I've done that. If you've watched me over the past 6 months, I'm still the same person, but there's some changes that have happened. I've become, at least from my experience, a lot more compassionate. I've become a lot less judgmental. I've become a lot more inclusive than I did before. A lot less reactionary. I don't get my feelings hurt nearly as much as I used to. I'm still, I'm still grandiose and dismissive, and I tell you the truth whether you like it or not. But so did my higher self, and he was one of the most powerful, beneficial experiences I've ever had in 3D. So how did we get onto that? We were talking about our higher dimensional beings, the same as Vedic deities. You said, would you recommend doing spiritual practices and ritual to these higher dimensional beings as we would Vedic deities? No, what I would recommend you do is CE5. That's how you make a connection to these beings. Now, these beings are here and they want to help. Here, let me back things up a little bit. The Earth, I don't know how important the Earth is to the whole multiverse, but it is extremely important. What happens here now has huge impacts on the entire multiverse. So what has happened is that all of the highest level, like for instance, there are civilizations that only have ninth dimensional beings in it. So I don't know what, if you would call that a planet. We could talk about what planets really are. They're not balls of gas or, balls of rock. And that's not what planets are. That's what we experience them as in 3D, but that's not what they are. They're worlds. They're dimensions in and of themselves. So there are planets where there are beings that are just ninth dimensional beings. That's it. There are planets that are just eighth dimensional beings, seventh dimensional beings. And each one of these civilizations on these planets is going through their own spiritual process to move up a dimensional level. And part of what they do is they want to empower all conscious life in the universe. And the Earth is a place where a lot of higher dimensional beings go to incarnate. And so there's a lot of their friends and their family and that are on Earth now, walking around as humans. You ever notice that there are certain animals that you like? Here's one thing. Do you want to know why there is a martial art called Mantis Kung Fu? It's a very interesting and unusual martial art that takes a long time to learn. If you go and try and learn it and become a badass, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you spend years and years and years learning it, but they take on aspects of the mantis insect. That's because there are mantis beings in higher dimensions that have crazy hardcore superpowers. And one of the ways you can learn their powers is by doing practices that emulate them. There's a reason why Kundalini is called a snake. You can fill in the rest. So you don't need to do rituals to higher dimensional beings. You just do CE5. They're waiting. They want to talk to you right now. They're literally waiting by the phone, waiting for you to call them. And they've known you for thousands or millions of years. And they've been waiting for you your whole life. The guys that I'm working with now, my experience was that I didn't know anything about extraterrestrials, and I came up with this idea because I had heard about it, that I was going to connect with them. And then I found out it had to have been within a week or two. Within a couple of weeks, there were extraterrestrials that were bringing to me the souls of family members to work through karmic issues with. My mom was probably the biggest one, and I became aware that I was her father in a previous life. And there was a whole karmic unresolved thing that we worked that out. There was literally like an ET standing there going, and here's your mom. They create the dimensional space so that, you can go back in time, and we did. We went back into time and fixed that up, and that's what these beings are about. It's not like they're coming to Earth visiting you from some strange planet, and they have to go and take your stool sample to figure. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's like your grandfather, who's known you, showing up at your house with a pea jar. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just ridiculous. That's what the deep state cabal wants you to think, so you'll be afraid and you won't evolve. But if you do both, I know who my higher dimensional deity is. And so when I chant to that particular Vedic deity, I know I'm chanting directly to my ninth dimensional self. I'm just reconnecting. I'm just downloading information from my higher dimensional self. Athamanimist, honest feeling. Recently during energy work, I had this strong feeling of relief as it became apparent to me that I am still going to be around after I die. I felt a sense of comfort and courage. That is awesome. And I'm with you. Listen, I've always been a spiritual guy my whole life, ever since I was a little kid. And as a little kid, I had no fear of death. In fact, I remember being 4 years old and knowing that I was never going to die, that it was impossible for, the me that I was feeling. I knew I wasn't thinking about my body. I knew I was never going to die. And I went around telling people that. And then, of course, I grew up and went through 3D life, and things got different. And, I was still a spiritual person even after going through my, walking away from religion and then finding other kinds of spirituality. But when my soulmate passed, when she passed away, and then I couldn't sense her. I was so connected to her, and I was, so sad when she died. I thought that before she died, that she and I would be able to talk to each other. That once she was dead, we would have this mental communication. And, I was in a lot of grief. I was in a lot of pain, but I couldn't feel her. I couldn't feel her. I didn't know where she was. I could feel that she wasn't physically on the planet anymore. And then I started to doubt, and I started to wonder what happens after death. And there was a period of time when I didn't, I kept talking about spirituality and practicing it, but inside I was like, I don't know if there is life after death. I think once we die, that's it. And it's amazing that I felt that way. But of course, I don't feel that now. Now I've since talked to her, I've talked to a bunch of others. And when that dimensional gateway is blown open like that, it's just, you can never close that door again. Once you open that door, you can never close it again. Let's see, what else? So I understand what you're talking about. Athamanimist. Sintachna with Paradise Unlimited, honest feeling, relieved yet restless, relieved as I settle into my new lifestyle regimen with daily energy practice. Restless, human consumer side is becoming less, yet feels resistant. So listen, guys, I'm not trying to, thank you for sharing your feeling. I'm not responding directly to you. You just stimulated a thought in me. So I started thinking about people who I've talked to in the past who want to start these revolutions and let's get rid of money and, let's just do barter only and, all that kind of stuff, as if that means anything. It doesn't. I'm not saying to do that. If somebody wants to create a barter community, great. I don't care. I just live my life. That's it. The only thing I focus on is what makes me happy. That's it. That's all I do. I do catch myself thinking about how can I get more income so that I can buy more surfboards or, have a nicer house, to live in. That's it. Outside of that, I don't spend any time thinking about what happens. If the money changes from dollar bills to flower petals, I won't care. it's just details. So I'm not, and I know that none of those things work. They never have. Politics has never worked. Think about all of the revolutions that have happened. The revolutions where people were going to create freedom, and look where we are. None of them have worked. Because the only thing that's going to work is when we break the dimensional barrier. That's it. When we wake up to our multidimensional self. Until that happens, we'll always be trapped in some kind of fear-based ego nonsense. And until then, we just have to go our lives while all that stuff is going on. And my experience has been that if I focus on my soul and following what my soul does, that three-dimensional garbage doesn't stick to me. And I'm able to, I've moved back into the house I was in a month ago, but I was able to because the owner wanted to come visit his own home. And I got to go live in his sister's house for the same amount of money, and it was surrounded by water and palm trees, and it was unbelievable. I felt like a Colombian drug lord. And that's the kind of stuff that happens. The universe just throws at you all of this wonderful success and prosperity and happiness. And the only thing you got to do is just be true to yourself. I'm going to repeat myself. The only thing you have to do is just be true to yourself. And if you do that without reservation, these higher dimensions will feed you. So, anyway, you weren't saying that Paradise Unlimited, but you stimulated that in me. All right. Vincent.thunderwizard.com. Honest feeling. I want to do more CE5 and ask for help, but I don't want to feel like a burden. I feel self-centered and don't want to act on selfishness, but also want to connect with them. Advice? Yes. They are not codependent, which means you can't do something that will make them want to interact with you out of guilt. So you can call on them as many times, as much as you want. And if they don't feel like it's a healthy interaction for them, they won't show up. So do CE5 as much as you want without agenda and without expectation. And this is one of the things that I say when I go out of my body and I go out into the universe and I say, hey, does anybody out there want to connect with me? I always say, I have no expectation and I have no requirement. It's just an open invitation. And there's been periods of time when nothing happens, when they don't show up. There's been a couple of times where they've said, you need to rest. You've been doing a lot of interdimensional work and you need to let your mind rest. And then, I pretty much had, most of the month off, and it was because I'm writing a book, and they knew that if they were going to interact with me, it would be hard for me to write my book, so they left me alone. And I just finished my book this afternoon, and this morning they showed up, powerful as ever. So my advice to you is to do what you want. You don't have to worry about burdening them. They're not codependents. They're not going to respond that way. You'll be surprised at how much of you thinking that, I'm being a burden, you'll be surprised how much of that time they will respond in very positive ways. I don't know if you saw the most recent video. If you go back and watch the video of me where I say I survived when I survived the hurricane, and I show phone video of me. I have the phone, and you can see my radio. I had my radio on because I was in a hurricane and there was no, there was no anything. So I had to look on there to see if I could find any information. And as soon as I turned it on, it started going, and I had a conversation with them. And I said, "Oh, are you there?" "Yes." Oh, you're just letting me know that I'm going to be okay? Yes. Then I said, can I ask questions? Silence. I said, oh, that must mean that I can't ask any questions right now. I said, oh, well, I guess that means I should just take this at face value. I said, okay, here's where the important part comes in. I said, okay, I understand. And then I said, but it makes me feel rejected. And it makes me feel unloved and unwanted. And I said, I know that's not where you guys are coming from. That's just my thing. I'm sad. I just wish that I could ask you, because I was going to ask him every single fucking question in the universe. And then, I found the information and I turned the radio off. And, the hurricane is still going nuts and I'm flipping out. So I turned my radio back on and it goes crazy for like 5 minutes nonstop, which is impossible. And so I taped it. But the point is that they were saying very clearly, you are so loved. We are totally taking care of you. And they were acknowledging my feelings, Vincent. They were acknowledging my feelings and they were bringing love to me. I mean, if the message I got today, here's the message I got today. The message I got today, and I don't know if it was because of something I said or something I thought or something I felt, but the message I got today was this being said, you have a very special light that we need in order to explore the universe. And they were saying, be yourself, follow your light. They're going to tell you who you really are. And so, Vincent, I encourage you to do CE5 if you want to. And again, don't get your feelings hurt if they don't show up. Don't have any, codependent expectations on them. But be prepared to be loved and seen in ways you never thought possible. By the way, that's a very common feeling. I had that also, especially early in my CE5 process. Every time I did it, I felt unworthy. But that's part of the growth, is you ask and you move past your selfish ego, because that's your selfish ego saying I'm unworthy. You move past it. You go past the discomfort. And then you'll learn. You'll find out. You'll learn when you're being codependent, when you're not, and when it's just, they got other things to do. What else? Buddy Kane Helm question. I've been around the Ayeshalmer as of recently and sensed the symbol itself is a conscious being. Have you had this experience or something similar? I have not had that experience, but I completely believe you. So let's talk about yantras. The Ayeshalmer is actually a very ancient Indo-European yantra. And if you go, I wish I had it, but I found, this had to have been 10 or 15 years ago. I found an ancient Vedic scroll that had a bunch of runic symbols. It didn't have the runic alphabet, but it had symbols that Norse rune masters use. And one of them was the Ayeshalmer, but it didn't come from Europe. It came from India. And it was, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of years old. It was very old. And I went, holy crap. And I even made a video about it. One of my first videos, I talk about these two, and they call it, in Vedic, they call it the Ashtanga Yantra, which means the 8-limbed vehicle. Now, why is that important? Is because it wasn't until the Middle Ages that India started making idols. So now you see idols of Shiva, idols of Kali, idols of whomever. And it's great to worship idols. It's a beautiful way to do things. And deities will inhabit idols. But before there were idols, there were yantras. So the Shri Yantra, for example, when you chant specific mantras, it creates a 3-dimensional portal, and the deities will live in that. When you chant it enough, the deity will actually appear. And so the yantra is like a transporter. You know, like Star Trek, you just go and stand on the transporter beam. Excuse me. That's what yantras are. And each yantra was a deity. So before there were idols, people had yantras. So whenever you go to really old school Vedic temples and you see these yantras everywhere, those are actually the deity representations. Staring at them, looking at them, they will put the power of that deity in your mind. And so, for instance, if you wanted to chant to Shiva, you would find a yantra associated with Shiva, and you would chant whatever the mantra is associated with that yantra. So the Aish Yalmer is a deity. It is a physical representation of I don't know what deity it is, a very ancient Indo-European deity that is shared by both the Vedics and the Europeans, the Norse. So you're absolutely right, buddy. Let's see what else. Timothy Zoll, honest feeling. I find making a daily gratitude list difficult. No problem doing a mental note, but some put pen to paper and write down 10 things they're grateful for every day. I'd rather meditate. Well, I've never taught people to do that, but I have been in 12-step groups where they do that. And so, of course, I do think it's great. That's your honest feeling. So I appreciate you sharing that. There is something that happens when you take an actual pen and you actually write onto paper. There's something that happens mentally that doesn't happen if you type it or if you speak it. I don't know what or why. We use the word spelling to spell something. And that comes from, originally when you carved something using letters to create a word, you were actually creating a magical spell. It means there's something going on here when you do that. I have a hard time believing that you can't find 10 things that you find gratitude for. So I'm sure that you could, if you chose to, come up with 10 things that you're grateful for. So, I don't know what your resistance is to that. Even if you're in a lot of pain and life is horrible, my heart is beating, I'm able to breathe, my eyes work, I have a nose on my face, I don't have any broken bones. Those are real simple things. I've already got through 5. I have food in the refrigerator. There's 6. So those are things you can be grateful for. And, like I said, I don't teach people to do that. But if you've looked at that and you're struggling with it, like so much so that you have an issue where you have to talk yourself out of doing it, I would say give it a try. What have you got to lose? You'll definitely work through your resistance, and something might happen that you're not aware of. And worst case scenario, nothing will happen. So you won't be any worse off than you are now. So you got nothing to lose. If it works, don't fix it. Let's see, what else? Nothing else. We all done? We all done for the day? I guess so. This was a good one. All right, so that's it. So guys, hashtag transdimensional revolution. So do me a favor, go up onto your Twitter, go up onto your Facebook, and hashtag it. Talk about it. Let's make this a meme. Because if people understood that we could, I want to express to you how totally revolutionary this is. It goes beyond any possible 3D revolution. When you interact with a higher dimensional being, that is the worst possible attack that you could do on the elite. You can't do a more intense attack against the destruction of the elite. When you, every time that you connect with a higher dimensional being and or meditate on the effects of it, you reduce the power of the elite significantly. And every time you open yourself up and expand yourself interdimensionally, other people will spontaneously, like what I've noticed, what has happened with me is that every time I have a powerful transformative experience, especially with my interdimensional friends, I see everybody around me level up. So if you want to see people level up, break through that interdimensional barrier. Everybody that I've seen that's done CE5 and is doing it regularly, their lives have transformed, amazingly. It's like amazing the transformation that has happened. Some of you are watching me right now. Let's see, anything else? Nope, that's it. All right, guys. Thanks. Thunderwizard.com. Go to the Lightning Qigong and subscribe. Those of you who want the most powerful energy practice on earth, go to maoshan.thunderwizard.com and then do both. If you want to see all of my books, go to courses.thunderwizard.com. And if you want to do any of the free practices, you're new to the channel, go to the channel page and click on the playlists and just do something every day. The Hool breath, any of the meditations, any of the Qigong, just do something every single day and we can defeat the elites. That's it. I wish you guys all the best. I will see you all very soon.